I am autistic and can't understand one of my evaluation constructive feedback. Do you? I am a programmer and I work with programmer. You know what programmers like? Bullet points. Why? Sums up most relevant info. Sentences are short and don't need to respect grammatical structure. Pro. Less words, easy for the eye to scan. No one likes a wall of text. A huge paragraph is hard to read, and if you look for a specific info you read earlier, it's hard. A bunch of bullet points is way easier to follow. Emo. Don't worry. Even NT people can ramble in emails without being aware of it. The thing to remember usually is to keep things factual. And try to keep your personal opinions out of it. Unless specifically asked for. Give the simplest version of the situation that you possibly can. You can always say at the end of the email, if you need further details, please let me know. Ask yourself if each sentence really needs to be in there. Would it still make sense if you deleted it? If it would, then delete it. Perhaps you could merge it with another sentence. It takes a lot of practice learning to refine emails and keeping them concise. I'm sure if you keep your emails short, try to stick to 50 to 60 words max unless asked for high detail. And then suggest they contact you for more details if required. They will be delighted that you took their advice on board and will see how hard you're trying. You can always post a draft of an email to writing and get people to help you refine your email until you get the hang of it yourself. Only do this with non-confidential and non-identifiable emails though. Before every email I send, I always ask myself, does this person need to know all of this? What is the minimum I can say to still clearly convey the point I want? Keep in mind, this is not always because your level of detail isn't appreciated, but that when someone has to sift through 30 to 50 plus emails a day, concise messages are better. For feedback, I think detail is much appreciated. However, if you find that it applies to feedback you provide as well, then perhaps ask the requester of the feedback to narrow down what it is they want feedback on. This will allow you to be more specific and more concise. I'm autistic, and tend to write overly long emails because I want to make sure that the person has access to all the information and to make sure I'm making my decision-making processes known to the person I'm writing to. This doesn't work well in a corporate environment. People want information fast, and they don't want to have to read a long email to get to that information. People might get hundreds of emails a day, and they don't have time to read every one of them in full. So you really do need to adapt your writing style to what works. You want to use something called bluff, bottom line up front, or what's called the newspaper approach. Bluff simply means your very first sentence is the conclusion, and the rest of the paragraph supports that. If you are responding to a question, answer it in the very first word, even, yes. Because you don't have to put all the information you have in one email. You can just stop there, and if they need more information they can ask. If you are going to write a long email, you can try the newspaper approach. When newspaper writers write, they don't always know how much space they are going to get for their column. So they write the entire story into the first paragraph. Then the next 3 paragraphs is the same story, but at another level of depth. Then the 5 after that are the same story at even more depth. They won't literally use 1, 3, 5 every time. But you get the idea. The reason is so that the editor can cut the story at 1 paragraph, 4 paragraphs, 9 paragraphs, etc., and it still makes sense. In this case, the reader of the email can decide how in-depth they want to get with the information. I will sometimes put headers in bold that break up different parts of the email so the reader can determine which are important to them. The first section will be synopsis, conclusion, or key findings, and is very short. Second section can be background or in-depth analysis. I will sometimes put a special caveats or presumptions section at the end that lists things I'm assuming or additional considerations that we might need to take. The point of all of this, though, is to be able to convey your core message as quickly as possible, while giving the supporting information if the reader chooses to read it. Well, for example, the main thing you are asking about is that first criticism. We don't need details about the second criticism because you're not asking about that. You could cut out 2 paragraphs right there. You could just leave it at, I understand the second point, if you included it at all. Fellow neurodivergent email essay writer here. I realized I was over-explaining too much detail in my emails as like a weird sort of wish fulfillment? I write emails like I want people to write me emails. I want people to explain everything, and I want them to take me on a wonderful written journey to their answer and how they got there. Apparently everyone else hates this. Easiest and quickest way I fixed this was to continue writing emails the way I wanted, but at the bottom I would put a header called Short Answer, Cliff Notes, TLDR, Summary, and challenge myself to try and write the email again in as few words as possible. Less than 4 sentences ideally, and with bonus points for yes, no answers where possible. That way I'm giving them what I want without stressing too much. Then over time, you become practiced at short answers and comfortable with it, and you can skip the long answer entirely. It's kind of funny this post is so long. I can see how the emails might be too long, haha. There is an exercise that has helped me with too long email messages. I first heard about it as an English class assignment. Students were told to write something. The topic isn't relevant right now, in 500 words. Their next assignment was to rewrite it in 300 words. The next assignment was to reduce it to 150 words. Don't worry about the exact number of words in my example. The point is to practice distilling your meaning down to its core. It's going to take practice, but it's a good skill to learn. It's like the old joke. I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time. Also, consider this. If it's much more than 10 sentences, would face-to-face communication be more effective and take less time? If you're anything like me, you're probably falling into a bit of a storytelling trap. I used to, and often still do, tell stories with lots of details. It's just wired into the way I think. But most people can't absorb all of it. Their mental bandwidth demands structure and relevance for each detail. The difference in thought structure means this will take time. But I have faith in your ability to learn this skill. It doesn't have to be the way you think. It's just a talent to develop so you can level up in life. Good luck, friend. To the first point, if you ask yourself a question in your head and answer it in the email, probably extra information that is not needed. When writing an email, focus on the reason for the email. If it does not have a direct implication, it is not needed. This paragraph is a direct answer to your question. I tend to ramble and go on and over-explain myself. There are times when I feel like all details need to be explained, and I paint a picture for the people I speak to because I am a visual learner, so I make sure the person I am with can see the picture I see. The more details to email I feel is better because they know just how well the situation is. This paragraph had no direct reason for being here. Therefore it was not needed. Many great answers here, but to add another point, it can be insulting when you over-explain. I had to work on this a lot. I was always afraid people didn't understand the point or a reference, so I'd explain it and they'd already know it. If you're just a normal person, most people will understand what you're referencing and the points you make without extreme detail. We're very adept at reaching conclusions with very little information. And if you were able to understand something quickly, then so can the person you're talking to. If they need more info, then they will ask. 2 different types of email. Write accordingly. ## actionable emails, asks. Start by introducing yourself. If the first email in the thread, a short sentence on why you need the task done, but not if the recipient already knows why you would ask. Elaborate and give info that might help them answer or complete the task if you know it's a burden for them to find on their own. Give the task, ask the question. End with, please feel free to reach out with any help, info needed, or the like. ## purely informative emails, reports important information gets lost in a long text. Identify what the recipient must know that they shouldn't know already, and put it in the very first sentence. Don't elaborate on how, why you have the info. Just provide it and let them know you're happy to elaborate. If you must, or it's expected that you elaborate, do so in the sentences after the main piece of information. Use paragraphs to clearly separate as to what piece of information you're talking about. The second item can be the most irritating for the person being asked. Literally, you are asking a question for permission to ask a question. When I was a supervisor, that was my greatest annoyance. Especially if your supervisor leads a large group. The faster you get to the point, the better. In this regard, it also applies to item 1. When drafting any correspondence, use the minimum amount of information required to communicate the need. As already mentioned, bullet points are a great tool for minimalistic communication. Keep it short and sweet. If more information is needed, they will ask. A couple of points. Yes, your post is too long. It's a wall of text and I lose focus after only a few sentences. Second, other people will also lose focus, especially if they are very busy. Make it succinct and to the point so they can know what you are saying in only a few seconds. Third, I made it a hobby some time ago to make my writing as succinct as possible. Cut out any words or sentences that are not necessary. Write something, then go back and play a game to see what words or sentences you can omit and still get the point across. This will help you tremendously. Think about what exactly does the person reading this email need to know. Give broad details instead of specifics. Unless you are talking about money amounts. If they need more information on any one point, they email you back and ask for it. Good luck. Learn to ask yourself, is the information I'm currently sharing, need to know? Or, just true? Quote. At the end of the day, even if you wind up undersharing, the person you are communicating with will ask for the additional details if they need them. If you can't visualize, imagine the person you're talking to asking for the information you are currently typing. It probably doesn't need to be in the email. I am not autistic but recognize in myself that I talk too much in emails, chats, etc. and am working to address that myself. My advice is to come up with a list of points you want to communicate. Then decide which of those points would be most important to the people you're sending the message to. Then just try to be as concise as possible. One paragraph of 2 to 4 sentences for basic messages. Maybe a couple paragraphs of 3 to 4 sentences for bigger topics. The idea is to keep it as short as possible while still getting your point across, because people tend to tune out or not read emails the longer they get. And then sit on it for a few minutes before sending in case you need to update, modify anything. This is less practical advice and more interested speculation, so feel free to ignore. I suspect that the difficulty you have with providing too much information has to do with a common neurodivergent symptom of lacking intuition of the other, that is, you don't automatically take into consideration what someone is thinking when you're communicating with them. Therefore, you are communicating an idea without the incredibly complex context of what the previous parts of the conversation might have been, assumed knowledge that is implied by a question or prompt, expected, common knowledge that the recipient should have, how the recipient actually takes in information, and their tolerance level. This is, in fact, weird stuff that neurotypical brains do. It's a level of pattern recognition that is one of the main stumbling blocks in AI development. Although I have no diagnosis of ASD or neurodivergent brain processes, I have struggled with excessive wordiness myself. I often break this down by imagining that I'm having a conversation with the recipient. I'm not sure if that would be helpful in your case or not. I have a lot of respect for your ability to break down the issue and ask for feedback. It seems like you will probably find a great deal of success with practice. Also, don't take any crap. You're clearly doing a great job. Ask your manager for clarification on what they would like. Specifically ask for an example of one of your emails they found too long and ask for clarification on how they would have preferred that email to be drafted. No one, including you, is a mind reader. It is a reasonable request that the manager demonstrates what they require with regard to your work performance. Source: I work in HR. Are you sharing information your boss needs for their job, or are you showing your work on how you did your job? For your feedback emails, your boss may not want a recounting of events but simply your conclusions, so they can apply them. I tend to write emails that are too long too. Here's my suggestion to improve. 1. Don't put the recipient's email until you're done. 2. Write your draft email. Ramble a bit but try to keep it on point. 3. When you are finished, read through it and pull out specifically what you need the person to act on or know. 4. Write that one thing in no more than 2 lines at the beginning of your email. 5. Write something like, additional details, in front of the rest of the email and cut out anything that doesn't relate to the one thing. If your main point is clearly labeled, it won't matter that much how long the rest of it is.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.